Hello everyone, this is End Time Counterpoint. My name is Dan. Thanks for tuning in today. Now in this video I'm going to be talking about the secret codes that many people think are in the Bible. And I'm going to be talking in particular about 3 books that deal with these kinds of codes. And I'm going to be talking in general terms about each of them. But I think after this brief discussion, there should be several questions that will arise in your mind regarding all of this, and then we'll come to a conclusion. Now, I'm going to leave a link in the description below to the first book that I'm going to mention today, and that is The Bible Code by Michael Drosnin. Now, when you follow this link, you'll be surprised as to how many books there are regarding the idea that the Bible is written in some kind of secret code. And this book, The Bible Code, was very successful when it was launched, and I think there was a part 2 to the book. And the main premise behind this is that, particularly in the Hebrew text, if you look, you will find certain combinations of letters and words that have some sort of predictive value to them. And if you've ever done a word search, then you should be able to grasp the idea behind the Bible code. And that is, if you look in a vertical, horizontal, or diagonal direction, you will be able to string together these letters and words that will supposedly give you an idea of what is going to happen in our time, especially regarding important people. That, in short, is the basis of the Bible code. You have to look for these combinations of letters and words in different directions. Again, just like doing a word search. And if you know how to do this, then you will become clairvoyant and you'll be able to know what is going on in our day and time. That's the Bible code. Now, the second book I want to mention briefly is one that I've touched on already in a previous video, and that is The Apocalypse Code, written by Hal Lindsey. Now, this doesn't deal so much with word and letter patterns, but it deals more with imagery. And Hal Lindsey's idea is that if you can match up descriptions of images in the Bible to modern day equivalents, then you will be using his Apocalypse Code. Now, you remember in grade school when you had, for an exercise, a word description of something in a left-hand column on a page. Then in the right-hand column, you had a picture representation of that description, and you had to draw a line from the word description on the left to the image on the right. You had to play that little game of matchup. Well, that's what Apocalypse Code is all about. You have to look at the images that are described, in particular in the book of Revelation, where John is describing all of these terrible looking images, and you have to match them up to today's equivalent in modern technology, in particular, modern weapons of warfare. For example, one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse is described as a rider with a bow on horseback. And Hal Lindsey's assertion is that if you look at this image and know that the bow is a long-range weapon, then you should be able to understand that John is referring to today's ICBMs, cruise missiles, rockets, and the like. Okay, that's the matchup. The word description of the image and the real-life object of what that image represents. That's the Apocalypse Code. And then we have Perry Stone's book called Deciphering End-Time Prophetic Codes, and it's not so much about word patterns or images and their descriptions, but it's all about finding repetitive events that turn into a cycle of events that should help you predict the next event that will become part of that pattern. And he uses the example of something that happened to American presidents who were elected in years ending with 0. And sure enough, every example he gives, something happened to a president who was elected in one of those years. And this surefire system of prophecy and prediction works until it doesn't work. And he even confesses that even though he found this pattern, it didn't work in the year 2000 and it didn't work in the year 2020. So much for those prophetic codes. But he insists that they do exist, and that if you can identify these patterns, then you should be able to predict what will happen, especially to important people in American politics. That's what the prophetic code is all about. Now, after mentioning these 3 books and the basic premise behind each book, a question should arise in your mind. Actually, a couple questions should arise, and that is, how can there be so many codes in the Bible? And then the second question you should ask is, how do we know which one to use? Let's just say you're in the Old Testament and you read a vivid description of something, maybe in the book of Ezekiel or Isaiah or Jeremiah. Which code do you use? Do you use the Bible code and start looking in the original Hebrew text for patterns in the horizontal, vertical, or diagonal direction? Do you use the Apocalypse code and try to match up what the writer is talking about to today's modern equivalent? Or do you try to identify that as part of a repetitive pattern and cycle that will clue you in as to what might happen next in the near future? You see the dilemma? There can't be that many codes that exist. And then there arises the need for another code book that tells us when to use which code at which particular time, depending on which book of the Bible you're reading. Now, you should be able to understand as we go through this discussion that this is a black hole that just sucks everybody in. And there are so many people who have made this assertion that they have discovered a code in the Bible that it's bordering on the ridiculous. You know, Perry Stone makes the comment in his book about deciphering prophetic codes, and I might go into more detail in a later video on this, but he says that most Christians understand at a lower level. And he sort of insults Christians who really want to understand the Bible for what it says. And instead of congratulating people for doing this, he asserts then that they are simply understanding at a much lower and basic level. But even though all of these books about Bible codes have been written in recent years, it still remains true that simplicity brings clarity. But complication and complexity brings confusion and the opportunity to deceive. And maybe that's the ultimate reason why all of these code books exist, because the more complicated they make the Bible, and the more that they hide what the Bible really says behind all of these codes, then the more opportunities they have to deceive. And maybe that's what it's all about. Folks, my name is Dan, and again, I thank you for tuning in to End Time Counterpoint. If you have enjoyed this discussion, then by all means, give it a thumbs up. Better yet, subscribe to this channel and tell others about it. I would greatly appreciate your help in building up my subscriber base. I do have a book available. It is called Blinded by the Rapture. You can find it at Apple Books or Barnes & Noble. You really need to get it because it doesn't deal with codes and mysteries and secrets. It just lays everything out in a plain and easily understood manner, and it will help you understand Bible prophecy regarding the day and age in which we live. So once again, folks, my name is Dan. Thank you for tuning in today. I will see you in the next episode.